I began by carefully studying the finished painting, trying to capture not only the proportions, but also the character's movement. Using a B2 pencil, I outlined the overall silhouette first, using light lines to indicate the dynamic pose, defining the direction of the body's movement and flowing hair. It was crucial to immediately achieve balance so that the character wouldn't fall to one side. Next, I refined the anatomy. I added lines for the shoulders, arms, pelvis, and legs, gradually transforming the sketch into a more solid form. I used the eraser not simply for corrections, but as a highlighting tool, removing unnecessary lines, leaving only the most essential and readable ones. After that, I moved on to the details. I drew the face, eyes, and expression, trying to preserve the character and a slight boldness of the gaze. Then I added elements of clothing, a belt, bags, accessories, and weapons. At this stage, it was important not to overload the drawing. I kept the lines lively and slightly jagged to maintain the sense of movement. Finally, I cleaned up the sketch, strengthened the main contours, and prepared it for painting. Once the sketch was ready, I moved on to the most interesting part: color. I worked with acrylic paints using 3 brushes, a large one, slightly larger than medium, for the background, a medium one for the main masses, and a fine one for the details. I started with broad brushstrokes for the background. Using a large brush, I applied blue and turquoise shades, not trying to make them perfectly smooth. Instead, I left texture, streaks, and slight unevenness. This added liveliness and a sense of air. In some places, I added flecks of white to create the effect of light and depth. The hair is one of the key elements. Using a medium brush, I set the base green color and then began layering shades, darker in the depths and lighter at the tips. Using a fine brush, I added individual strands, enhancing the sense of movement, as if blown by the wind. The clothing is a vibrant red. I deliberately chose a rich shade to create a strong contrast with the cool background. First, I laid the base with a medium brush, then used a fine brush to draw in the folds, seams, and decorative elements. I added some dark tones in the recesses and light tones on the peaks to create volume. I painted the face carefully, using a medium brush to lay down the base skin tone, then used a fine brush to work on the eyes, nose, and mouth. I added subtle shadows to prevent the face from looking flat. I increased the contrast in the eyes. They're the focal point and set the mood for the entire work. Small details are the final stage. Here, I used only a fine brush. I drew bags, belts, thongs, chains, and weapon elements. I added accents, yellow, purple, and dark lines to enhance the contrast and interest. I also went over the contours, emphasizing them in places to better separate the character from the background. The entire process was built on layers. I took my time, letting each layer dry a little to prevent the colors from blending unevenly. The end result is a vibrant, high contrast, and dynamic image. Critical evaluation of the work. What came out? The movement is conveyed very well. The pose, hair, and clothing create a sense of dynamism. The color scheme is strong. The contrast of red and blue immediately attracts attention. The character is expressive, especially due to the eyes and silhouette. The background is lively, not flat. This is a plus. What didn't quite work out? The anatomy is a bit simplified in places, especially in the arms and legs. More precise proportions could have been achieved. Some details of the clothing look overloaded or not fully thought out. The perspective of the weapon is a bit floating, not entirely convincing. What could be added or improved? More chiaroscuro, especially on the body and clothing, to enhance volume. Clear definition of the light source. Subtle effects, for example, a glow from the weapon or particles in the air, would add atmosphere. A little variety in the background, adding depth or a hint of the surrounding. Work style. This is a mix of anime, manga style, with elements of sketch art and expressive painting. There is a feeling of handwork and free lines. Who might like it? Fans of anime and fantasy characters. For those who appreciate dynamic illustrations. For artists who enjoy a vibrant, imperfect style. For YouTube and social media audiences, this type of work looks great in video format.